I used to think our story was solid and ordinary in the best way, the kind of love that grows quietly while no one is looking. We met at a friend's small birthday. She laughed at a joke I barely finished, and somehow we began texting that same night. Nothing dramatic, just two people who liked the same late coffee and the same rainy walks. Months turned into years, our apartment filled with little rituals, the Sunday pancakes, the thrift store frames, the plant she rescued from a supermarket shelf and called lucky. We made a home out of ordinary objects and promises, and I told myself that this is what safety feels like, not fireworks, not chaos, but a steady light you can read by. I learned her moods and she learned my silences. We planned trips we never took, saved for a car we ended up buying in a color neither of us expected. She talked about a garden one day. I joked that I could barely keep basil alive, and she pressed a packet of seeds into my palm like a contract. Hold this for later, we said, and later felt infinite, the kind of future that never needs defending because it simply arrives quietly and on time. Then work got busier for her. A promotion she had wanted for years. I remember the champagne in paper cups, her eyes bright with a fearless kind of joy. I said I was proud and I meant it. I told everyone she was brilliant, that she could build a bridge out of string and willpower. At first the late nights felt like a badge of honor. We joked about takeout schedules and shared playlists. I would wait up and she would tumble in with cold air in her hair. We ate noodles over the sink and called it a victory dinner, the kind lovers have when life is too full to sit down. Somewhere in that season small changes sprouted. Harmless on the surface, she turned her phone face down and said it was a habit. She started showering as soon as she got home. She said it cleared the day off her skin. I believed her because I wanted to, and also because belief is easier than suspicion. A new cologne lingered in her coat like a shadow of a stranger. She said a colleague wore too much of it, an office air that clung to everyone. I nodded and folded the thought into a drawer in my mind. We had always given each other space. You do not interrogate the person you love, you ask how was your day and you listen. Sometimes she answered with stories, sometimes she smiled and said later, and I told myself that later still belonged to us. Nights gathered at the edges. We stopped eating at the table and drifted to corners, me at the laptop, her with the glow of a screen that did not include me. I tried to build explanations that would protect us, a big project, a difficult client, a season that would pass. I remembered the seed packet in the drawer and thought love is a garden with patient weather. I can wait, I can water, I can trust. But the weather did not break the way I hoped. One night she came home later than usual. Her voice carried a new rhythm, almost like she was still speaking to someone else. I asked if she was hungry. She said she already ate. I smiled and nodded though my chest folded inward. After that, more nights came with explanations that hovered at the edge of reason, harmless if taken alone, troubling when stacked together. A missed call returned too quickly, laughter in the bathroom behind a closed door. A weekend conference that stretched into Monday. I told myself this is the shape of ambition. This is what it costs to rise in the world. But my hands began to fidget with the seed packet in the drawer, soft paper thinning with touch. She used to look at me like I was a certainty, a fixture of her days. Now her eyes slid past me like I was part of the furniture. I tried to reach her with small gestures, tea by her laptop, a note in her bag. But each offering seemed to land in silence. She thanked me distractedly. Eyes already back on her glowing screen. At night I lay awake counting the spaces between us, listening for her breathing, wondering if it matched the rhythm I used to know. She guarded her weekends, said she needed solo time to reset. I said of course and meant it, people need air. But the air between us felt crowded with words neither of us spoke. I started walking in the evenings, a loop around the block to quiet the nerves. Once I saw her reflection in a cafe window though she was not there, my mind projecting like a cheap movie. That night she arrived with laughter still clinging to her, and I realized I had not heard her laugh like that with me in months. I told myself joy is not a pie, there is enough for both of us, yet I could feel a slice missing. A neat wedge cut away while I was washing the pan. Once she left her phone on the counter, buzzing with a name I did not recognize. My stomach clenched but my hand froze. I did not touch it, because touching felt like crossing a border I might not return from. Instead I stirred the soup until it boiled over, steam fogging the kitchen window, blurring everything beyond. One Saturday she said she was going for a run, her shoes already by the door. I nodded and wished her good pace. She smiled quickly and left. I sat by the window pretending to read, but my eyes chased the clock. An hour passed, then two. When she returned, her cheeks were flushed but not from running, no sweat, no tangled hair, only a freshness like she had stepped from a shower elsewhere. I wanted to ask, but words jammed in my throat. She kissed my forehead lightly, almost like a sister, and went straight to her phone, tapping furiously. I stared at the seed packet again and thought how fragile paper is. One tear and the promise inside spills out, weeks blurred with the same rhythm, departures with vague explanations, arrivals with invisible walls. I told myself to wait for proof, not to accuse without ground, but silence became heavier than any evidence. One night I finally asked, "Are you happy?" The question hung like smoke. She blinked, surprised, said of course. Why wouldn't I be? I smiled but my chest burned. I said no. Reason, just checking. She laughed softly, turned off the lamp, and rolled away from me. I lay awake tracing cracks across the ceiling like fault lines. The next day she sent me a photo of a meeting room, neat desks, bottled water. The caption said another long one. I wanted to believe it, but a corner of my mind whispered, who takes photos like that? Why send proof unless proof is needed? Still, I wrote good luck, I love you. She hearted the message but did not reply. Later that evening I saw her walking across the street through a cafe window, not alone. She was leaning in too. Close to a man whose face I could not fully see. Their laughter rose even through the glass. My body froze. The world became muffled like cotton stuffed in my ears. I did not go inside. I turned and walked the other way. Home felt like a stranger's apartment. Objects looked staged. The plant called Lucky bent toward the window like it too wanted escape. I sat in the dark until her key rattled at midnight. She said the meeting ran late. Her voice steady, practiced. I nodded and kissed her cheek, tasting a lie I could not swallow. The days after blurred, like walking underwater, each sound delayed, each movement heavy. I watched her routines like a detective hiding in plain sight. But every clue was slippery, deniable, wrapped in ordinary gestures. She kissed me goodbye but her lips were already elsewhere. She laughed at my jokes but her eyes checked invisible messages. I wanted to scream but fear stitched my mouth shut, because if I asked directly, the answer might cut our life in two, so I waited, I watched, I wilted. One evening she announced a work trip, just a couple nights, a hotel by the river. I smiled, said be safe, but inside something cracked. That night I searched her drawer, something I had never done before. My hands shook as if betraying my own vows. I found receipts folded small, dinners for two, wine too expensive for colleagues. My chest tightened, breath shallow. I put everything back, ashamed and broken. When she returned she hugged me with arms that felt polite. She smelled of soap that was not ours. I smiled anyway. Performed the role of partner, because the alternative was silence screaming in every corner. I began writing unsent letters, filling pages with questions I could not ask aloud. Do you still love me? Do you see me? Am I enough? Or just a memory taking up space? I burned them after, the ash scattering in the sink like gray confessions. One night I dreamed we planted the seeds. The sprouts grew fast, tangled, wild, roots cracking the floorboards, branches tearing through windows, and when I reached for her hand she was already gone, standing outside with someone else. Smiling, the dream stayed with me all morning. I watered the plant called Lucky until the pot overflowed, soil spilling onto the counter. She glanced at it and frowned, said you are overdoing it, it will drown. I wanted to say so will we, but I swallowed the words, my throat raw with everything unsaid. Each day became a performance, me clapping for her triumphs, her smiling for our photographs, the space between us widening until even silence had an echo. One evening she put her phone down face up by mistake. A message lit the screen. Only a name I did not know and the words miss you already. My world stopped, the sound of my own heartbeat louder than traffic. She grabbed the phone quick, eyes sharp, said it's nothing, a joke. I nodded but inside I knew the garden we promised had already withered. After that, trust was no longer something I could pretend into existence. It had shattered, sharp pieces hidden in every smile, every silence. I moved through the house like a guest overstaying, careful not to disturb, waiting for a truth I both feared and needed. One night she came home late again, her hair perfect, her voice light. She said traffic was bad. I nodded, but then I asked quietly, are you in love with him? The words tasted like blood. She froze. The mask slipped for just a second. Her eyes wet with something between anger and relief, she whispered, "I didn't mean for it to happen. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to hold us together." But the confession was already enough. My world tilted, the floor unsteady. I sat down. She kept talking, saying things about needing more, about not feeling seen, about mistakes. But the words blurred. Only one phrase burned into me. "I didn't mean for it to happen." I thought about all the Sundays, the pancakes, the lucky plant, the promises folded into ordinary days, and wondered how love can dissolve without anyone noticing the exact moment. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away, not in anger, but in exhaustion, the kind that lives in bones. Silence filled the room heavier than any shout. I realized then that love doesn't always end with slammed doors or broken plates. Sometimes it ends quietly, like a book closing, no drama, no storm, just a soft click. The next morning I packed a bag, not everything, just enough. She watched from the doorway, tears on her cheeks. She said, "I'm sorry," and I said, "Me too." Because apologies are useless when the garden is already dead. I left the seed packet on the counter, unopened, a relic of a future that never arrived. The plant called Lucky bent toward the light, reaching, surviving, maybe even forgiving. I closed the door behind me, carrying only silence, a silence that still follows me, asking in every empty room, at what point did love become a ghost, and why did I pretend not to see it? And now I keep asking myself, when does love truly die? Is it when trust breaks, or when silence becomes louder than words? What do you think? At what point does love become a ghost?